I've been thinking about where I want to start with just explaining this entire journey I've had with bulimia. 10 years being bulimic, 5 years in recovery. And I think it's important to start with this fact that no matter what your addiction or your struggle is, it's usually a symptom or a solution to your pain or both. And in order to look at why that's happening, if you're a person who wants to get better, you have to be willing to go back and say, how did I get here? And for me, there was actually a lot of freedom that came in understanding how the brain works. And I am in no way a psychologist or neuroscientist expert, but the more that I could understand, this happened to me not because I'm broken, not because I'm a messed up human, but because I have a human brain. And when given the circumstances that I went through, the pain that I experienced, this is what a human brain will do, because our brains are always trying to protect us from pain, from discomfort. And so for me, where it all began was back in my childhood with messages, not necessarily from my parents or family, but everywhere around me, that being big, especially as a woman, was not something to celebrate. I can go back to early memories. For example, one of my earliest memories, I must have been 4 or 5. I was at a friend's house. She had a ton of dresses in her room, and I just remember wanting to try them on. I was like, beautiful dresses, right? And I was trying one of them on. I remember her mom coming in the room and ripping it off my head and saying, "What are you doing? You're gonna stretch that out." She wasn't trying to be mean. I probably was going to stretch it out, but that was kind of a critical moment where I remember thinking oh, I'm bigger, right? And then it just went on and on from there. I was a large child. My family, women, we grow super fast. So by 4th grade, I was about 5'7", 140 pounds. That is not like a huge 5'7" person, but it's a very large 4th grader. And there's so many memories, right, of comments made about my body, comments made about how big I was. People didn't believe I was as old as I said I was. I did get made fun of a little bit for being fat. There were some of those comments that came up, and those things sting. And it's important to also, again, going back to the neuroscience, to remember those early childhood years, our brain is trying to make sense of the world, right? What makes me safe? What is dangerous for me? And even though my parents, I remember my mom has told me she went to a doctor. She was concerned because I was a chubby kid, and the doctor told her, do not talk about food around her. And that was back in the 90s. So I would love to shake that man's hand, because diets were way more acceptable back then. We didn't have the big movement against diet culture like we do today, which is something else I will be talking about. But it didn't matter that I wasn't getting those messages from my own family, because I was getting them everywhere else.